Welcome back, welcome back. Some say Ireland will just not take no for an answer as the country goes to the poll for the second time in 16 months today for a crucial vote on the Lisbon Treaty. Supporters of the treaty say that this is Ireland's date with destiny and there is no plan B if they fail. So what does this vote mean for Ireland and for the rest of Europe and indeed the rest of the world? Well, I'm joined now by Bridget Laffen, chair of the Ireland for Europe campaign, and by British MEP Nigel Farage here, head of the UKIP, who wants Ireland to vote no. Why is it so important for this time to say yes, and is it odd that we never seem to take no for an answer?
For Ireland, it's very important. Ireland is a small state that's had a very good relationship with the European Union. We've had a very good experience of membership. Euroscepticism is not a characteristic of the political culture here. There were issues in the last referendum. The government went to the other member states to get guarantees on these, to make sure that there was both assurances and clarity for this time round. But more importantly, the context for Ireland has changed. We are in a deep economic crisis. All of the job creators in our society, be they multinationals or small companies, all of the large trade unions, all think that it's a very important platform for recovery. But more importantly, the Lisbon Treaty itself is important for Ireland and for the EU. It's a treaty that will make decision-making more efficient. It establishes and underpins the values of the system. And it will help prepare Europe for a role in the world that must be stronger, given the world that we now enter in the 21st century.
Okay, let me just come in there for a minute. Fair time for all around. Thank you very much, Bridget. We'll come back to you in a moment. But Nigel, you deserve a word.
Well, you know, it is an important treaty. I'll agree with her on that. I mean, this treaty, for the first time ever, turns the European Union into a state in its own right, internationally recognised, with the ability to sign treaties and with global ambition. So it is very important. If the Irish vote no in this referendum, what it will do, it'll bring that process to a halt. It'll mean there'll be a referendum in Britain. It'll mean there'll be a debate, a broader debate across Europe about what kind of European Union do we want. And that, I think, in any democratic sense, would be a good, healthy thing.
What would be the consequences of a no vote? What would happen then? You've said, and other of your supporters have said, there's no plan B. I mean, there must be some plan B.
Well, firstly, can I say that this treaty does not make the EU a state, and there's been a German Constitutional Court judgment to that effect. So keep that argument out of the way. In terms of the consequences, I think they're both political and economic. Politically, Ireland would find itself in the slipstream of a potential British renegotiation after a Conservative victory in the next British election. And it's not in Ireland's interest. Our membership of the EU in 1973 was the second act of independence for this small state. And it's not in our interest to get caught up in the internal dynamic of UK politics and policies on the United Kingdom. It's entirely up to the United Kingdom to sort out its relationship with the EU, but frankly it's also our business to sort out our relationship with the EU, and I certainly do not want to see Ireland being the battleground for Eurosceptic forces, be they from Britain or from elsewhere in the continent.
And do you think, in fact, economically it's definitely better for you to be in than out, economically, in a recession?
Well, not only is it better, but the head of our Treasury Management, who's in charge of the Irish national debt, has said that the cost of Irish borrowing will go up very quickly if we vote no. And more importantly, I would listen to those who create jobs in the society. Intel, Microsoft, all of the large American companies have all come out and said that a yes is better for Ireland. And we do have a very large foreign investment sector in our economy.
Thank you very much. Do you think a yes is better, Nigel, for Ireland and for Europe?
No, I don't at all. I mean, I think what's happening here is, I mean, just remember the French said no to the Constitution. The Dutch said no to the Constitution. They rebranded it as the Lisbon Treaty, but didn't change any of the content. And the Irish, the only country that voted, said no. Who doubts that if the British had had a vote, if the Germans had had a vote, if the French had had a second vote, there would have been lots of no's. And what we've got here and what's happening in Ireland is a political professional class saying you must have this, and increasingly the peoples of Europe feeling very sceptical about the whole direction this thing's going in.
And as we were saying just now, I mean, the fact of the matter is It's only people who want a yes who seem to get a second vote. I mean, no country that voted yes has let the noes have a second vote.
Well, quite. I'm going to Dublin Castle tomorrow for the result. If it is a yes, I'm going to suggest that it's the best of three, the only sporting thing to do.
Yes, there's a report today and yesterday in the papers, Bridget, that if there's a yes from Ireland, then we will very soon see the appointment of Tony Blair as European President. Would you welcome that too?
Well, I'm not so sure that that's the case. Tony Blair has extraordinary standing in Ireland because of the Good Friday Agreement and all of his work on Northern Ireland. But I wouldn't be so sure that he will be the President of the European Council if that comes to pass. I would predict it more likely be someone from a small state, but we'll wait and see. The Lisbon Treaty has to be ratified first here, and then obviously it requires the signature of the Czech President Václav Klaus. And he is also deeply sceptical and will continue to use delaying tactics. He has both written extensively about the EU and argued strongly against it. He regards Czech membership of the EU as, in some sense, a return to their previous association with the Soviet Union, which of course is a very extreme view.
He believes in national
but
democracy,
I think
doesn't
that if
he?
the Irish...
I mean, that's what Klaus wants a Europe of nation states that trade together and cooperate together, but where national democracy comes first and where we can vote for the people that make our laws and get the chance to remove them. And the whole point about the EU system now, let alone post-Lisbon, is the people that make the big decisions are beyond our democratic fingertips.
This would be your dream, but do you realistically think, just 1 minute, Bridget, but one thing I must ask you is, do you think there is, if this vote went no and the Czechs and so on and so forth, do you think there is a possibility that the EU could fall apart?
Well, it wouldn't fall apart because the Irish vote no, but it would be a serious pause to think, what do we want? Do we want this to be really to be a global superpower, or would we rather we took it back to being an organisation of nation states that traded together? That's the real debate about Europe, and that's the one that the politicians don't want the people in Britain and elsewhere to have.
Back to you, Bridget.
Oh, can I say that there was that experiment? It was called the European Free Trade Association, led by the United Kingdom in the 1960s. It failed, or all its members joined the EU. There is no return to simply a European-wide free trade area. What's distinctive about the EU is the fact that it's based on law, and very strong law at that. More importantly, there is no law made by the EU in the EU that doesn't involve the elected governments of the member states and ministers and the elected MEPs in the European Parliament. So this caricature of the EU that is trotted out time and time again by parties like the United Kingdom Independence Party, in my view, is a caricature, is at odds with the reality of how the EU operates. And national democracies remain extraordinarily strong.
I've got time to ask you one question before we lose the satellite, and that is, what is your prediction of the result? What majority for whom?
I think there will be a yes. I think it will be very narrow.
And Nigel Farage, what do you think?
Despite the wall of money for the yes side, despite a very biased media campaign, despite all the threats, all the thuggery and all the bullying, I think it'll be a yes, but only a very narrow one. It will not be a wholehearted endorsement of this Lisbon Treaty.
There we are, narrow majority on either side. We've found a point on which the two of you can actually agree. Well, to all our guests, thank you to all our guests. And to our executive producer, former executive producer, who alas couldn't be with us anymore, sweet dreams, Rebecca. Bye for now.